Councilmember Brandau.
Here.
Councilmember Capriolio. Councilmember Olivier. Councilmember Quintero. Councilmember Zhang.
All right. We're going to get our meeting started then with an invocation from Sarbjeet Singh. And Sarbjeet is from the Sikh Institute of Fresno. So if we would all stand, and after Mr. Singh is done, we'll have a flag salute.
ओंकार वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। श्री भगवती जी सहाय वास। श्री भगवती जी की पातशाही दसवीं। प्रथम भगवती सिमर कै गुरु नानक लई ध्याए। फिर अंगद गुर ते अमरदास रामदास हुई सहाय। अर्जन हर गोबिंद नौ सिमरौं श्री हर राय। श्री हर कृष्ण ध्याईऐ जिस डिठे सब दुख जाए। तेग बहादुर सिमरै घर नौ निद आवै धाए। सब थाई होए सहाय। दसवां पातशाह श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी सब थाई होए सहाय। दसां पातशाहियां दी जोत धन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी दे पाठ दीदार दा ध्यान धर के बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। हे निमाणिਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਾਣ ਨਿਤਾਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਤਾਣ ਨਿਉਟਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਓਟ। हे अकाल पुरख सच्चे पिता वाहिगुरु जीओ। धन धन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी महाराज। आप जी दे हजूर अरदास बेनती अरजोई है। पातशाह जी आप जी दे प्रीतवान ਸਮੂਹ ਫਰੈਜ਼ਨੋ ਕਾਉਂਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ। ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਜੀ ਉਹ ਤਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਆਰੰਭਤਾ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ। ਸਮੂਹ ਸੇਵਾਦਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਰ ਤੇ ਮਿਹਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਹੱਥ ਰੱਖਣਾ, ਇਮਾਨਦਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੱਚਾਈ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਸ਼ ਕੌਮ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਬਲ ਬੁੱਧ ਉਦਮ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨਾ। ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਜੀ ਉਹ ਵਿਣ ਬੋਲਿਆਂ ਸਭ ਕਿਸ ਜਾਣਦਾ। ਕਿਸ ਆਗਿਆ ਕੀ ਚੈ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਮਹਾਵਾਕ ਅਨੁਸਾਰ ਆਪ ਦਿਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਭੇਦ ਖੂਬ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ। ਸਮੂਹ ਸੇਵਾਦਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਰਹਿਮਤ ਕਰਨੀ। आप जी सैशन आरंभ करन दी आग्या बख्शिश करो। सही प्यारे मेल जिन्हां मिलिया तेरा नाम चित आवे। नानक नाम चढ़दी कला तेरे भाणे सरबत दा भला। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। बोले सो निहाल। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। In few words, I would like to translate this Sikh prayer. We call it Ardas. Means Sikh prayer before God. We call Akal Purkh. The word Ardas came from Persian language, and this is the word Arzdasht, meaning a request, a supplication, a prayer, a petition, or an address to superior authority. A person who performs an Ardas is called Ardasiya, and it is done in one of the following situations. One before performing or after undertaking any significant task, and second after reciting daily Sikh prayer or rituals, and third after completion of religious services. Sikh prayer begins with Ik Onkar Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, means there is only one God and all victory belongs to Him. May the dynamic power of God help us. Then we remember our 10 spiritual leaders we call Gurus. Their 5 beloved ones, 4 sons of 10th Guru, great Sikh warriors, and those who sacrificed their lives for humanity and religion. We pray to God that forgive us, O Lord, all our faults, and extend your helping hands to everyone. Grant us the company of those who may help keep your name fresh in our hearts. Through Sadguru Nanak, the first teacher, may your name be exalted, and may all of mankind prosper according to your will. The Khalsa, the pure man, belongs to God, and to him belongs all the victory. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. Thank you, Jan.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. We appreciate that this morning. Councilmember Zhang, you've got a ceremonial presentation this morning, a proclamation of Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day.
Council, thank you, and Shannon and your guest, Michelle. Appreciate for representing our disability community. This is a city proclamation in that we support our community and we do what we can to make sure that they have a normal life. And, we appreciate your leadership, Shannon, and not only representing the city of Fresno, but your passion and commitment within the community and trying to make sure that our city do the right thing for all of our residents here. So before I hand this over to you and to Michelle, I want to make sure that our city clerk reads this proclamation for the city of Fresno.
Whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed on July 26, 1990 to ensure the civil rights of citizens with disabilities, and whereas 17% of residents of the city of Fresno and 50% of residents over the age of 65 have one or more disabilities, and whereas Fresno, California affirms the principles of equality and inclusion for persons with disabilities as set forth for the state of California and embodied in the ADA. And whereas numerous organizations in our community work with constituents to bring forth the promise of hope and freedom that is envisioned by the passage of ADA. And whereas July 26, 2014 celebrates the 24th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, now therefore be it resolved that we, Mayor Ashley Swearingen, and the Fresno City Council do hereby proclaim July 26, 2014 as Americans with Disabilities Act Awareness Day in the city of Fresno.
Thank you, Councilmember Zhang. I want to turn over to our Disability Advisory Commission member, Michelle Bronson, who's also the Executive Director of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Center, to say a few words about this.
On behalf of the Disability Advisory Council, I would like to thank you and the council members and the mayor for recognizing ADA and the significant role it plays in our lives. Because if it wasn't for ADA providing accommodation so that we can have equal participation in society and equal participation in education, employment, and leisure, we want to focus on what we can do, not what we cannot do. And because ADA makes that possible, and we want to serve, we want to engage, we want to be able to take our families and do things. For example, I take my children to a movie, and we want to go with their friends, and I would use the caption glasses, and I can read the captioning. If it weren't for captioning movies, how would I be able to do it? I would not be able to see these movies until maybe 2 or 3 months later, but now I can see them with my children. So I can go with my mother as well. So I thank you for recognizing ADA. Thank you so much, Councilman Zhang.
Now we are on to the approval of city council minutes from some previous meetings. So we're going to approve the minutes from June 19th, June 26th, and July 10th. Madam Clerk, have there been any changes to those minutes?
No, there has been no changes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Do I have a second? All right. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 6-0. And then we need to approve the minutes of the successor agency. That is also several different meetings, June 19th and June 26th. Do I have a motion to approve? And a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Now we are on to council member reports and comments. Councilman Brand.
A clarification from the city manager on we're in stage 2 on our water, and now it's 2 days per week. Are those 2 set days?
Yes, it's 2 set days based on odd even. So
okay.
Tommy's here, so I can't off the top of my head remember what they are.
Come on up,
they
Tommy.
are, but they are based on an odd even.
Good morning, Tommy.
Yes, so odd is Tuesday, Saturday, and even is Sunday, Wednesday.
Okay, Tuesday, Saturday, and the other even was what?
Wednesday, Saturday.
Okay, I want to put this on
Wednesday,
my
Sunday. Wednesday,
I'm
Sunday.
going to put this on my website for the District 6. So, and it's got to be after 7 p.m.
After 7 p.m. before 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Yeah.
Okay, to 6 a.m. Now, is there any restriction? Can I run the sprinklers 8 hours between those?
No, I mean we're working with our education folks to help our residents kind of appreciate kind of how their lawns react. It's kind of like a sponge. If you put a sponge on your table and poured water on it, it has an absorption capacity. And at some point, you exceed that, and the water will just start running all over the counter. So we're trying to work with our residents to understand that if we kind of get them some short pulses, let them rest, let them drink, and then repeat that in that 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. time frame. It's a lot better for the...
What is the goal of the city as far as conservation on this next level of...
Right, so the state's emergency regulation went into effect last Tuesday, Wednesday, and they were targeting 25% as part of that. And when we go to stage 2, our target on the stage 2 is 25%.
Okay, that's pretty significant. It's roughly is about 250 gallons per person per day. Is that the average right now?
That's the average. If you take all the water pumped to the system for commercial, industrial, schools, everything, divide that by the population, we're at about 240 gallons per capita per day right now.
Okay, so our goal would be to drop that about, roughly 30, 40 gallons?
Correct.
Okay.
And the way the state is, just a point of clarification, the way the state is asking us to report it, they're actually asking us to report on the residential consumption. So we're just going to look at our residential class, 110,000 meters, and we are then going to divide the population by just how many people are attached to the residential consumption category.
Okay. And
so it's a little different than how we've done the math in the past, but it's apparent they're really targeting the outdoor irrigation associated with...
So like on a commercial complex, the same thing. If you're an odd number,
Correct.
You have I'm thinking a shopping center, you're going to be either the 2 days or the other 2 days, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And same for the city facilities.
And I know what's going to happen. It's happened already. Is that, people are calling. Hey, I went by and the park over here, the school over. I had a deal at Fugman School a couple of weeks ago where they were seeding new lawn. I had to soak it, but I'm already getting the calls that now that people are looking at, more restricted times and up to $500 fines, right, by the state of California, we're going to get a lot more. All of us are going to get a lot more calls, and I know that we're still playing catch up at on everywhere, particularly in the Parks Department. And I talked to the city manager earlier this morning about asking that they reassign the irrigation repair, which are currently being done by Public Works, into parks, because parks has people out there 7 days a week, like at Roding Park, Woodward Park. We can be more responsive to these calls that come in, and we should be. If we're asking citizens to conserve, we need to be. And
we're all attached to the same system.
Yeah,
so
we're going to be a big target, I can tell you that. So we need to do everything we can. And I've also talked to the city manager about some of the new technology where we're using these timers that are actually communicate directly with satellites. And they're so precise. They're the same things that Ag is using right now, that they can measure barometric pressure, humidity, all this stuff. And I believe you're saying there's a pilot program, city manager?
Yeah, I've talked to the Public Works Director. We have 2 new parks online. We've got the Martin Ray Riley, and we have the Universal Accessible Park. And I've asked Mr. Mosier to initiate a change order for both those parks to replace what was ever specified as a regular controller to one of these more smart controllers. Because what I'd also like to be able to do, because we've done this in the Parks Department with a lot of our lighting, I'd like to have it run off of a smartphone in which we can adjust or monitor, more importantly, monitor these systems via iPhone or an Android or something else like that. So first steps first, and Council, we'll send you a copy of it. A memo went out from my office yesterday to all the departments, giving them specific direction as to things they need to be implemented immediately. Things like checking irrigation clocks, checking to make sure that the systems are functioning properly. Areas where we have, as we found the other day, irrigation systems that were watering essentially nothing because the plant material was gone. to basically cap those. Median islands are the same way because you can't go in right now and try to correct the problem and put planting down because it just won't survive. We'll have to do that in the fall. Washing of vehicles, we're going to limit that to once a week. There was a couple of other things. Oh, and to contact any of our tenants in which we lease property to make sure that they are also implementing a lot of the steps to control or reduce the amount of water that they use as well. I need to sit down and contact one of our larger tenants, which is the zoo, because they do use a lot of water, and whether or not there's some practices that they can, or some changes in their practices that they can implement immediately to reduce the amount of water that they consume at the zoo as well.
Yeah, and what that's going to do, I mean, just having like an app, like a lot of people now have got applications for their home. They can look at cameras, to any place in the world where they're at, is that we can respond quicker. If somebody can just simply do an app and turn a valve off versus trying to call 2 or 3 people on call, get them out there, things move a lot faster. And I think it gains public confidence that we are, truly, we're the role model for everybody else. But I think we need to do, if it's possible, is a citywide assessment of all our landscaping from, all those things that we control, from median islands to parks and public properties. So I realize we can't do everything overnight, but I think a citywide assessment would be the first step. And I'd like to see, if it's possible, that I've talked to some individuals who have these smart timers, that we look into that and see if there's a way we can find some manufacturers that we can buy large quantities, and we could offer those discounts to citizens who want to purchase these. My understanding is they're around $300, but if you bought a couple thousand, they might drop down to half that price, and we could offer citizens that. And the other thing would be on these smart type of meters, is that not necessarily going to be 2 days a week. And I would ask for exemptions because the way these work, they'll probably lose less than half, even if you did it 2 days a week. But we could explore that and figure what's the fair way to do it. But it's the way to really, embrace this thing, because I don't see any immediate relief in the drought, and that we, like we did in streetlights, we take the lead on conservation and innovation, and we find ways to save water, and more importantly, we save money for the people that can least afford it.
And let me add one of the other things that we requested from the community at the press conference is that if the community sees something at one of our facilities that isn't correct, call 621-CITY. We have folks who will respond as quickly as they can, and we need the eyes on the street to tell us where we have problems. We have run into situations, it's very common, especially this time of year, in which someone will get into the actual backflow device and manually turn the sprinklers on and then walk away. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when they see something, it's not, I wouldn't call it vandalism, but it isn't necessarily the clock, but it is somebody has gotten into there, cranked open the valve, and is just running this irrigation system. So when they see that, please call us, because there may just be a case in which somebody doesn't have anything else better to do than to run through the sprinklers, and then they leave them on.
And the final item I thought of too was the drones. I know that ag is using drones. A lot of people are using drones that monitor fields. They can determine where, if they're on these really super smart drip irrigation systems. Everybody is fighting this water crisis. That we should, I know PD's talking about it, but I think even for irrigation and a lot of other stuff, down the road there's potential for the city to utilize these things to spot them, be able to respond directly to them. So, Scott, you want to add something?
Just wanted to add, we're excited about the opportunity. We've been looking into it. One challenge I wanted to point out is just within what we have in the Public Works purview of for park maintenance, median islands, subdivision, landscape buffers, and such. We actually have 1,300 different irrigation systems citywide, and each of those has its own controller on it. So I think what we're talking about focusing on is really the kind of the greatest cost-benefit ratio, and starting with the areas that have the most water usage, some of our larger park sites. But we seriously have landscape irrigation systems where maybe it's a median island that's less than a quarter mile long. It's a median, and that's on its own controller. So, we can't just go out and say, let's adjust Herndon Avenue or Jensen Avenue and dial it back down. That may involve, 20 or 30 different systems, and each one is a manual adjustment to go out.
Yeah.
Typically takes us about 2 weeks to make the cycle each fall and then each spring, and we go out, turn it off or turn it back on. So we want to get beyond that and into the 21st century.
Yeah, and I think we can, and that's why I think a citywide assessment will accomplish that. And I appreciate everything you've done and Tommy's done. I know Tommy, you've only been here a few weeks, but you're making contributions already. So anyway, thank you.
All right. Actually, I might just throw out a few more comments on that same note, and then we'll go on to Councilman Zhang. I want to clarify something. The $500 fine that people are getting, in my view, and I might be wrong, that's a state law.
Yeah, we're not changing our fine. That's a state requirement. We don't, because of all the other steps we've taken. We don't believe that's applicable. So the current fine structure as it is today is going to remain in place, at least for this year.
So in Fresno, people are not going to be getting that $500 fine?
No. It's $45. You get a warning, and then it's $45, and then it's $45, and then it's $45. It's not progressive. So nobody will be getting a $500 fine.
Okay, how are we getting out of participating with that $500?
Because it was only a recommendation or a guide. It was not a mandate.
Well, that would be interesting. So, Bruce, I would be interested in the city doing a press release to clarify some of that stuff. Because
Okay.
we're getting all kinds of calls in our districts. I believe you guys are too. And people are connecting this $500 fine with the city of Fresno as if we're taking their money and spending it on something else. And we need to clarify that.
Okay.
Right?
Well, we'll work with our communication director today and get something out.
And then also, we're already getting calls to lead by example. I know there was a piece on one of the network news groups last night talking about a city park and I know Councilman Brand just brought this up, but is there any way that we can give direction to our groups that would be in charge of that to really get out there really quickly and make these adjustments so that continuing, we don't look like we're demanding something of somebody else that we're not doing?
That direction was given yesterday. So I'll work with Scott as well as the Parks Department to see, if it requires additional staff, if we need to bring in some irrigation, some support from the private sector to check these clocks, or we have to do overtime, we'll do overtime. Back to Councilmember Brand's comment, we had already been talking about moving irrigation back to parks because I'll put my former parks hat on. I had to write the check for the water we used, but I had no control over how much was being used because that was being handled by Public Works. And we had already identified a number, and what we did, for example, last year, we identified a number of parks that seemed to have high utilization, and that was used to prioritize repairs in order to reduce that cost. So we will take that same information. In fact, Tommy's already ran some of the numbers. We are, and especially our parks, as will schools. Any place you have a lot of lawn, a lot of green space, you use a lot of water. So we'll make sure that we get that information over to Public Works and the parks and say, these are the priorities. I need you to go out immediately and start adjusting these clocks down. 100 feet of median island, although it may have drip emitters that are all missing, isn't going to use as much water as a park would. And more importantly, in a lot of cases, our parks are drawing from wells. So we are just as guilty of no controls per se, no meter on those well sites as some other private owners of their own wells.
All right, cool. Thank you. So if we could find a way of clearing up that $500, the city of Fresno is not participating in that, and that's not an amount of money that we're charging people if they wash their car. And so I'd like to really clear that up for our public. So thank you very much. Count. Yeah, I'm following the agenda. This is council comments. Council reports and comments. Been doing it for years. Councilman Zhang.
Thanks. So just a quick tail end off the conversation, and maybe it is that confusion, but I also got a call from one of our council colleagues from smaller cities over there saying that there's a state legislation that was forcing the cities to enforce their new water rule. I'm going to say that this might be the confusion here, Bruce, unless is there something going on at the state that they're trying to pass new legislation for?
Well, the State Water Resources Board just passed new requirements that were targeting cities that haven't implemented any of the steps that we've implemented for the last 9 years.
Okay.
That's where the biggest focus is. So while we don't believe that we are required to implement a number of steps, because quite frankly we already have, the reality is that a number of our well sites continue to see a decline in groundwater levels. You take that in combination with a reduction in allocations from Kings River supply and nothing from Millerton. We've got 3 years of drought. We've had a reduction in water, and quite honestly, not a clear path forward as far as our ability to invest in future infrastructure. It just doesn't make sense for us to continue to pull from our aquifer, not knowing what the future lies. Even if, and I said this the other day, even if we have an El Nino and it pours, cats and dogs this winter, unfortunately, we have no way to capture that water and use it to offset the amount of groundwater that we are using. So in a lot of ways, if it rains, if Pine Flat and Millerton are all of a sudden full again, when they release that water that we will have paid for, the ratepayers will pay for that water. We have no way of storing it, so it literally goes out the back door. We will revisit this during the winter, and I was sharing with Tommy, it doesn't make any sense to me if we do have an El Nino and it is raining cats and dogs, why anyone needs the water once a week anyway. But we aren't required to, again, meet the mandates or the recommendations or whatever we want to frame it as that were recently adopted by the state. We're doing this because of our own situation here. As Madera's been on twice a week watering now for quite some time for the same reason. They're seeing a decline in their aquifer.
Okay. So I don't want to get into a workshop here. Can you send out a trade memo out to everybody what this new the state water board mandate suggestion is, and just kind of do a quick summary about what we just said about its impact directly with the city of Fresno, where we think we are. Just have a better idea. And then I don't know if we can encompass the larger county too. What does that mean for other cities that may or may not have already been doing this? How does that work for all of our surrounding partners?
Well, we would encourage the other cities to consider twice a week watering, but that's ultimately up to their elected officials in those jurisdictions.
Yeah, I'm just concerned what you just talked about. We passed legislation, and then there's not a mechanism to, I guess, enforce it, per se. I mean, we get the state legislation says they suggest 500, and we're like, well, thank you, and we suggest 45. So I guess that I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding on that. Thanks, Bruce. There's a couple other things, Bruce. Got a call from our folks that use the Veteran Auditorium. I guess you probably know our air conditioner is down.
If it is, we'll look into it. I wasn't aware that it failed. And I'm not sure which unit, because there's like 5 units on that building that have been problematic for quite some time.
They weren't specific, but they said something's down.
Yeah.
Good morning, Council. Scott Mosier, Public Works. We received a work order in facilities management on Wednesday, and on Tuesday, and we already had our electrician dispatched to look into that the next day. Minor repairs were underway just for the lunchroom area and another small room within the main auditorium. There are challenges in, I believe it's the east wing that has some other real small aging units on it. That's going to be a little bit separate challenge, but we already took care of the main item, and we'll continue to monitor that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and stay up, Scott. Bruce, I just want to make sure that, Scott, I want to thank you and your team for working with me in the office on a couple of projects within the district, especially with the car wash. I appreciate the staff looking into that. And I know we still got a little bit to go, but I appreciate your effort. And also our fire folks with NutriAg over there in Biola. They really stepped up and did some really quick things for us to really help our business community. So I appreciate that, Bruce. I just want to let you know. Lastly, Bruce, I'm going to bring an item, probably the first meeting in August. This is the continued discussion that we've had about that gap for insurance policy for small developers from the 4 and then from 4 up to whatever it is that we've had. And we had a meeting over there at the C Community Temple about that discussion. So I think this has been long enough. So I just want to let you know that the item, I'll put that item coming up on the first week of August, that first meeting. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, screen is clear. So we are on to the approval of today's agenda. Madam Clerk, have there been any changes to today's agenda?
Yes, there are 2 changes. The first is under consent item 152 regarding taser cameras. That's been continued to July 31st. And the second item is 179, also under consent, and it's regarding payday lending. And it should be subject to mayor's approval, and that's not annotated on the agenda. That's all.
So that one's been removed?
Been removed.
It's just added that it's subject to
Mayor veto.
Okay.
Okay.
But item 152 has been continued.
Yes, to July 31st.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a motion to approve today's agenda? And a second? Oh, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Now we're on to today's consent calendar.
Council President, there's one more item. There is a special closed session today that it's not on this agenda, but it's a separate notice.
Okay.
Just wanted to mention that.
All right, thank you. On today's consent calendar, I would like to pull consent item 14-023. That's about the special election, and we have our county clerk with us, and she'll be able to make a few comments about that after pulling this item from the consent calendar. Are there any other items that council members would like to address on today's consent calendar? Yeah. All right, then now we're going to go to the public, and members of the public that would like to address anything from the consent. And Barbara, you've turned in a card.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this here, I'm going to start from the beginning where I want to start from. On this election, the reason Brenda here, Mr. Orr, she was appointed and she wasn't never elected. Now, I wrote in complaints that was supposed to have been turned into Sacramento about the election because in my District 3, Mr. Bain's district, all those signs says east. Even the place where they vote at, it says east. How can the people know where to vote at when it's in that area? Then I've seen them at the Prisoner Board of Supervisors. Then they came over there and they was changing the geographics, like so many black, Mexicans, Hispanic, and stuff in different districts. I had that turned over. All this times, months, I've been asking her when they gonna come. Then they sent a letter saying that they had moved. This whole election process is illegal and it's against the law. And the next one I want to talk on is about these cameras and these garages and stuff. And I've read about it. It's supposed to be like if you're talking, they can hear all your conversations and everything that goes on around here. That's against the law. Then I want to go down here to these laser guns with Chief Dyer and Mr. Zachary them. The police people, the officers, they need some kind of education on what to do because I'm tired of hearing they was drunk, they got this past history, they arrested for the gun, they went for the knife. We got a big training camp out here. We had a lot of money for that training camp. I talked for it. Let's send the people out there so they can get on board on what we're supposed to do. Instead of getting 100 laser, and the laser was shooting people, hurting them, and killing folks, I don't think that's fair for the people, and I'm always with the police department. Then when I come down here and see all the Universal Park, but I agree with that one because it's for the children. You guys did good having some place to go, but all these people want cameras in all these places. They shouldn't be. And then the post office saying that they're going to make pay their loans in their office out there in the day's paper. So how can we object to it when the post office is trying to get money for themselves? It's not fair. And one of Mr. Bain's pictures come up in the newspaper where the guy was in there. He owns the newspaper, was in one of those places. And it's not fair because the people got a right and we're not a dictator out here. So I'm going on with what you're saying. And the parkers, garages, they all shouldn't be. People can hear what you're saying. And I agree one thing. I didn't read that they saying you, Mr. President, is anarchy, so I didn't believe that part. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address the consent calendar today? All right, then do I have a motion to approve today's consent calendar? And a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Now on contested consent, we have this one item that I had brought up. And so, Mrs. Orth, if you'd come talk to us a little bit about this process, and good to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President and Council members. I am Brandy Orth, your County Clerk and Registrar of Voters, and I'm on a countywide tour of visiting all 15 incorporated city councils, and the certification for the June election gave me a great opportunity to come and visit with you today. As you know, the gubernatorial primary election was held June 3rd, and the city of Fresno had 4 council member seats up for election. The District 1 seat will move on to the general election to be held on November 4th. The city of Fresno has 110,430 registered voters, and 19% of them voted in the June election. Of those 21,000 voters, 70% of them voted by mail, and the remaining 30% went to the polls. The County Elections Department established 128 polling locations throughout the city and provided 4 vote-by-mail drive-through sites for the convenience of your voters. The Elections Department is currently in the middle of candidate filing for the November election. Filing will close August 8th at 5 p.m. for anyone wanting to be a candidate or for any entity that wants to put a measure onto the November ballot. I want to let you know that it's always a pleasure to work closely with your city clerk, Yvonne Spence. She's professional, knowledgeable, and a good public service, and the election department appreciates the good relationship that we have with her. So that concludes my comments today. I'm happy to answer any questions, but my department is here to serve not only you, but the voters of Fresno County, and we look forward to doing our job.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Orth. Good job. Any questions today?
I do. I got a quick one.
Okay.
Brandy, you didn't think you were going to come to city council and get away from just talking, right? We got questions. Kind of like, what is kind of been your consistent when it comes to the voting issues that the community has raised, whether they're in this, the city of Fresno or the surrounding smaller cities?
Just in general?
Just in general.
Usually when I visit city councils, they, especially the smaller cities, might have comments for me about polling locations. We are governed by many laws about how we establish polling locations, but we like to work closely with the city councils and city clerks to find the best locations in those cities. That's probably the biggest thing.
Okay. And do you think we have the financial ability to address some of those concerns that are raised?
Yes. The Board of Supervisors has funded my department adequately, and we have, ever since I've arrived, returned a few dollars back to the county at the end of our budget years, and so we still are able to provide all of the polling places as required by law, and the new drive-throughs are a little added extra, something that we do. So we're always trying to, do better, cheaper, faster with the resources that we have, but we're in good shape.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update.
And Mrs. Orth, I would like to ask, this 19% of our voters that voted in this last June 3rd election, what is the statewide average? How do we compare?
Well, to cities, I don't know. The county was 26% countywide turnout.
Okay.
So the city was a little bit below what the county ended up doing.
Okay.
And overall, we were probably the middle of the pack in the state of California. I think some of the small counties actually got up to like 40%. But the middle of the road was around our percentage or a little bit lower.
Okay. So the 26% is our county number, and that's kind of middle of the pack, and then the city's trailing behind that a little bit.
Yes, it is at the moment. But, the November gets a little more action, has a lot more measures and other things on the ballot, and a lot of special districts in this November election. So we certainly anticipate it to go up in turnout.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for visiting us today and giving us an update. We appreciate that. All right. Do I have a motion then to approve consent item 14-023 and a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Brandy. All right, we are, what's that? Closed session is about, because our next item, we have a 10 o'clock timed item. So I think we can go into closed session now, is that correct? Yep, let's do unscheduled communication. I know, Barbara, you've turned in a card, and so if anybody would like to comment, you can be right after Barbara.
Thank you very much. This is who I am. You know what? I can dress if I want to. Why should I dress when all my folks out here got plain clothes on and don't even have anything to wear, and we're going to act like a big shot? We ain't no big shot. We all God's people. I seen a woman come up here. She got a white face and a black arm, black as mine is. She told me, oh, excuse me. I said, oh, we kin folks. I don't want to hear that. If you're going to wear some suits and clothes and stuff around here, you're wearing clothes. That ain't who you are. Take them clothes off. We all look like monkeys. Gorillas or some damn animal they're talking about on the news about these folks. But what I'm up here now for, that whole election is illegal. You guys got us in East Fresno over there. Sal knows this here. And all the signs says southwest, southeast. And I want to know where's all that bond money, CBG money. The federal government sent us so much money. I want to know where all that money is at. It don't make sense for Mr. Baines not to even speak of this issue and Sal when they got probably in partnership with this money for Southwest Fresno. Even on the general plan, we're not even on the general plan. They consider us as Edison District. You guys should know better. You're the council. How is we going to be fairly represented when everybody is around here doing what they want to do for their little groups and tea parties and every little things? They out here got all this money on all these different committees, on the Workforce Investment Board, in control of all this money. This is the federal government's money, the people. And I admire Barack Obama. He came here and he helped everybody. All that money got him for unemployment office. Bail you guys out of that Fannie Mac, Jenny. You guys created all that debt. All that MGM, whatever that is, he got all this. And then what it is, Congress didn't want to do anything, and all of a sudden, they want him up in there now. I don't blame him. What he's doing now is out here fundraising so he can help you guys, the Democrats, so they can get a boost in on this election. You guys not fair. He black like I'm black, and I got Irish in me from my grandfather, and I got Native American in me. We all kin folks around this place came from us. It's not fair. And you guys know that general plan is supposed to be a housing element, and Southwest Fresno is the only district that don't look like that. And by law, in one of them budget books, Southwest Fresno is supposed to stay there, and Jefferson District. And they tore it up. What I'm going to do next, I'm tired of talking. You guys making me have ill problems up here talking to you guys about the same issue, and if I get sick on account of this, I'm going to have a lawsuit going pretty soon because nobody is not addressing my issues. And I know that you guys got that general plan. It's up there. You guys got it out, everybody around here. But what about the people that it affects the lower neighborhoods? We haven't seen it. Swansea around here, she's going to take all the money, all the jobs, and give it away to these folks. But what about and those enterprise folks up there ought to get out of here? And that's who you guys working for. You're not even working for the city of Fresno. You're working for them, so let them pay you. It don't make sense. They get all the money, swearing get all this money, shows and stuff off our money and everything else. And my light is red, and I want you to know, thank you for letting me have my speech, because I want you to know what I know, because I'm finna give me a big law, and y'all all going to be sued because you're not doing nothing about it. Bruce, you in it too.
All right, then. We are going to go into closed session, and so, City Attorney, if you would report.
Yes, we have two closed session items. The second one, this one is a little bit unusual. It's a conference with labor negotiators concerning unrepresented city employees. And the Brown Act requires that when we have unrepresented city employees being discussed in closed session, that the title of each employee be listed. And those are listed in the agenda. I won't reread those.
All right. Thank you.
The public is entitled to comment on the closed session before we go into the closed session.
You can comment right now, Barbara. And then we have a 10.
I've been here 40 years with you guys. When you was over there on Fresno Street, you got 2600 Fresno Street. This is not no Fresno Street. This is P Street. On this here, we got to be fair. Since all y'all pension money is coming from the tax people, tax rolls out here, and I'm on a kind of island, and I run for West Fresno School District and the City Council. How can I do that? The fire department and you guys knows this. You sign these papers all the time. and your money is paid up, and we're using all that pension money to take care of y'all bills for City Hall, and City Hall ain't paid no pension money in there in years. I gave the fire chief my papers, all my taxes and all that paper road that you guys had. They know about this money. But you guys is trying to hide it. Pay them people a salary. Look at all these fires. Look, everything goes on. They got kids and bills like you got. And you guys want to hold people's money and check up, and we done paid y'all pension money for life. Way overboard. And you know this. You sign these papers every year. And then the fire department and the police. And you guys don't pay no money into that pension thing. So why you guys bullcrapping? Give those people some money. Getting on those tall ladders, going out here, all these fires. Boy, I almost laughed my heart out when I heard Chief Dodge's car almost burn up out there. That was funny shit to me out here. There are all these wires out here going. Everybody is vulnerable for something. And nobody is no greater than God. God is the only boss around this place, and he's going to straighten out his whole house. Because I don't care what color you are, where we come from, we still God's people, and God is watching his property and his folks. And we own this Christian journey, and nothing going to stop us now. And you better believe this, because God is the boss, not finna go home. But when you go in that room, put yourself in them people's position. They got rent, we have no water, and I heard China got all that water sitting out there because we owe China a lot of money. And that old sewage thing out there. You guys got to wake up. There's a lot going on you don't know. But I do, because I deal with the people out here. That's why I come in. So what I'm going to say now, you did a good job. Watch everything. Protect our money for the city of Fresno. Tell them people upstairs in Enterprise that you want the money down here with you. You're the president. You can do this. And Sal knows it because he's been here. Bruce knows this because he's been here. Bye. Have a nice day.
You too, Barbara. Have a great day. We're going to ask you that again one more time, Doug, once everything's on here.
Yes, there's nothing to report from closed session.
All right, cool. All right, we're on to our 10 o'clock timed item, a hearing to consider proposed annual assessment for the City of Fresno Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District Number 1.
Good morning, Council. Scott Crowder, Public Works Department. As the title suggests, this is the annual assessment hearing for the LMD. This action is the second part to the whole process. It basically allows the city to put on the tax roll the assessment to collect funds for the LMD services through the year. I remind everybody, LMDs, we principally provide landscape services at various locations citywide in specific LMD districts. Let me catch up with it. Notice was published in the Fresno Business Journal about this hearing and invited anybody that wanted to provide a letter of protest to the city. I checked with the clerk's office. No letters of protest were received. Also, with this time, there is no rate increase proposed for this, and we're not annexing any new territory into the district at this time. That basically concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions after it's put out to public comment and see if there's anybody here for you.
All right, cool. Thank you, Scott. Any members of the public like to address this item? All right. Seeing none, Councilman Quintero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Scott? I had a chance to talk to Bruce a little bit about it this morning, and I just have some questions on it. The amount, the assessment collected is $703,000.
That's correct.
That's what it says. And so this is an annual thing an annual appropriation that we make, or annual vote that we make, assessment.
It goes on the tax roll.
And it said that the council adopted the resolution in 1983, and so each year it's gone up. Then the amount that we collect. No.
Yes, in general, what would prior to 1996 and the passage of Prop 218, this hearing would have included any new subdivisions that wanted to come in, that wanted to annex into the district. So when I look back in the records from the early 80s all the way to 1996, there'd be a whole list of tracts. And I'll kind of point out the tracts that are in that are on the exhibit, so you can see them in your district. Every time one of those was finished for the year, to put them on the tax roll, this action would include, we're going to include tract, 6,000, whatever. And we'd also, the council could debate, I think staff would probably come forward and say, hey, cost of water's gone up, our labor costs have gone up, and we'd recommend that the per square foot cost, we know what the landscape per square foot in each one of these is, we recommend that the cost increase go up, and that's the part that 218 took away from this body.
Okay.
And at that point, the city decided not to annex any more tracts into this, and we instituted the CFD program, CFDs 2 and 11, which don't require an annual process to levy the assessment, and they are annexed in with cost of living escalators in them, so the rate tends to keep up with the cost of providing the service.
Okay, so then the amount of land that you take care of hasn't increased.
Not since 1996.
Okay. Okay. So the monies are basically just used for maintenance? I mean, it's not for new hires, it's not for equipment, it's not for...
We've tried various service delivery methods over the years.
Okay.
Yes, it includes personnel costs. We've had a crew that goes around. It also includes any utility costs. The water bills for those specific water services that do those come out of the LMD. Any proportionate amount of the ISF charge is a very small amount, depending on how many personnel we can fund in the program at the time, go into that. So when I say landscape services, it is part of personnel costs. Mm-hmm. It is, part of the spray materials to keep weed control down. Those various things like that just go into providing landscape services are included in that service.
And I'm assuming the maintenance is probably going to go up due to the drought. Actually, you're going to have more things drying up. You're going to have to go in and do a lot more cleanup.
Well, that's the point that Mr. Crowder's making. We have not been able to increase. Well, we can go through a Prop 218 hearing, but the cost to maintain these landscape areas has gone up. Water costs have gone up. Labor costs have gone up. Mm-hmm. And last year, we had to augment or subsidize these landscape maintenance districts to the tune of a little over $28,000. And as time goes on, those are dollars that could be spent elsewhere that are being used to subsidize these landscape maintenance districts because we have not come forward with a Prop 218 process. That is one of those options council can consider. But as time goes on, that deficit is going to grow unless we increase the cost. And the level of service that the residents are receiving now has been reduced to 2 to 3 months rather than monthly. So while they're still paying the same, the level of service they're getting is less than what they used to receive. And now other revenue sources are having to be used just to maintain that level, which is, again, imagine a landscape median, or not median, but a buffer in a neighborhood that we don't touch but 4 times a year. A lot of things happen between now and then, which means you're deferring maintenance, things are breaking, plantings are dying, things like that. And so we get complaints from some subdivisions or developments that are going, well, you guys haven't been out here for 3 or 4 months. Yeah. Well, why is that? Well, because quite honestly, you're not willing to, would you entertain an increase in your rate? Well, no, I don't want to do that either. Well, then you kind of pay for what you get.
So landscaping isn't being replaced in some cases?
Yes. To expound on what Bruce is saying,
yes,
the level of service we're getting there is bare minimum. We've augmented it with the community sanitation funds just to keep it at the same level that we have non-district landscapes. I don't feel like it should fall below that, which we're providing citywide non-district landscapes, but I have to put that money in there to provide that frequency of service. That leaves, in your hierarchy of service, that leaves nothing for replacement. We've had to remove some trees that have just died. Irrigation repairs are done. I'm not saying they're not, but the other stuff that goes along with it, you end up removing it, and so put it this way, not much improvement's been made in the LMD
correct
stuff.
For the for the sake of time, Bruce, would we be able to get a report on, you said we'd have to implement another 218 process or something? Can we get a report on how that works? Or what's the process for that?
Given the conversations around here for the last 3 or 4 months, I think Doug has a memo that we can bring out that talks about the Prop 218 process.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
The council member was asking if we could provide a memo that outlines how we would initiate a Prop 218 hearing and what steps would have to be taken to initiate that process.
Right, the main steps are to do the fee study and then start the noticing process for Prop 218.
Okay. Yeah, because we're getting a lot of calls now too. I mean, not only like Councilmember Brand mentioned this morning on the water issue, but also the maintenance on some of the landscaping and shrubbery dying and not being replaced, that kind of thing. So I think it's good information for us to get so that we can either, basically ask the same question to the constituents. You want to pay for it, so.
And I'm sure there'll be a couple of different options, with some short-term and maybe longer-term solutions. Obviously,
or at budget time, we
we
can designate monies for that, can't we? From the general fund.
You could always take it from another pot.
Yeah.
That just means you're going to steal from Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I was just interested in on the process and what the options might be on that. Can you also provide options on that?
Yes, we can.
Adding on to that. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Scott, thank you. Screen is clear. Did you have a motion inside of that? Sal, you were the only one? Okay. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Nay? Motion passes 5-1. Excuse me, 4-1. I did. Councilman Brandow voting no. What's that? Not today. Today was not a yes day. All right, then. I think council is adjourned. I think we're done for the day. Isn't that correct? Yes. George, please.
George Hostetter with the Fresno Bee, and again, I apologize. I missed it in the unscheduled oral communication. But on the second item in the closed session, it doesn't state the city charter authority to go behind closed doors and have the council discuss, apparently, labor negotiations for the city manager or for the police chief. Those belong to the administration. And it doesn't state, I don't know where the city charter authority is to have the administration discuss labor negotiations based on the job for the city clerk and the city attorney. This is confusing. Where's the authority to do that?
The authority to go into closed session is under the Brown Act. It specifically mentions provisions for discussing unrepresented individuals in closed session, as long as you list all of those individuals by title and who their particular labor negotiator would be. For example, Bruce's labor negotiator could be the mayor, the city clerk and city attorney would be the council president, and so forth. So, yeah, it's under the Brown Act.
But those are not the council's business. They're the administration's business. And if the council wants to discuss what they might be paying Bruce Rudd, should do it in open session. And if the administration wants to know what council's paying city attorney or city clerk, it should be an open session. That's my only point.
The council does set the parameters of the terms and conditions of their contracts through the salary resolution.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Doug. All right, we are adjourned today.